All right, so the first thing I'm going to do today is going to be a pretty short class. I'm just going to go over the syllabus, and then we'll get started. The task is to work on Chapter 1 of the Illustrator book this week, but if you haven't purchased it already or you're still waiting for financial aid, I totally understand. The due date for that assignment isn't actually, it's not for another like 3 weeks. I have it set out to be like the 7th or something like that. Let me just publish this folder really quick so you guys can see it. So everything in my course is going to be in this course content folder on the left-hand side of your screen. So everything week 1 through week 17 will be, all the course content will be in these folders. So if you go in here, you should see 2 things this week. The assignment, which I mentioned, which is going to be due on the 7th of February. So you have, usually I give 1 week to finish assignments, but for this assignment, because we're just starting, if someone adds the class late or something like that, I give you guys a little bit extra time for this first assignment. So the way this course is designed, we go through the books, and then after that we are working on a sort of supplementary project, and all of that can be done in class or outside of class. I am here more as a resource. I'm not going to lecture at you guys. I'd rather you work through the book at the very least here in class, and I can answer any questions for you. If you feel totally comfortable with it, you're welcome to hang out and help other students. You're welcome to leave. You're welcome to work on other projects. It's totally up to you. I don't think it's very effective for me to just keep lecturing at you guys. If you're learning it in the book, I'd rather one-on-one help you through projects and assignments and all of that. So that's the way the course is going to be set up. It's going to be very self-driven, at your own pace as well. So if you wanted to work ahead in the book, you totally could. So yeah, let's take a look at the syllabus first. All of my contact information is going to be at the top of the syllabus. So if you don't know, my office is right next door in 125B. My office hours are Monday and Wednesday from 10 a.m. to noon. So I need to update this. Sorry about that. I will do that. Monday and Wednesday from 10 to noon is when I'm in my office. You can reach me by email or by phone at those times, or if you haven't been on Slack yet, I will post a link to join our Slack group, which is a sort of instant messaging chat application where we can communicate back and forth there as well. So this class is going to meet twice a week, 1:30 to roughly 2:45, 3:15 in that range, and we'll work through our assignments on a weekly basis. Here in this room. You can use all the computers in here. You can bring your own laptop. It's totally up to you. We're going to be working through these 2 books. Again, make sure you purchase these as soon as possible. So Adobe Illustrator, we are working in the 2017 release, and there is a 2018 release that just came out. I recommend buying the 2017 one just to make sure you have everything right. I don't think the 2018 version would be that different if you wanted to go with that one as well, and it just covers any new features it adds every year. So other than that, if you are unable to use the labs in this, use the computers in the lab, you do need to have your own computer, and you do need access to Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator if you plan on doing any of the work at home or outside of class. And so keep that in mind as well. Hopefully with the time here in class and maybe a little bit extra lab time outside of that, you'd be able to finish all the assignments. Yeah. No. So Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop, they come in what's called the Creative Cloud, and that can be purchased. There are student plans, or you can buy individual applications. So if you just wanted to buy Illustrator for the first half of the semester and then switch over to Photoshop, it's a little bit cheaper. But if you click on View All Plans and Pricing, and then go over to the Students and Teachers tab, you can buy all of the software in the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite for $20 a month, and you can cancel that at any time, or you can pay for a year at a time. It's totally up to you. If you pay for a year, I think it's a little bit cheaper, but not much. Does it? Jeez.
Then once you're off the student plan, then it goes.
Right. Yeah. So it's good to ultimately, like, hopefully your company, once you get a job, will pay for it. Yeah, that's what I hope. So, but you can buy that, or like I said, all the software's in here. If you work diligently in class and maybe a little bit extra outside of class here in the lab, you'd totally be fine with getting all the work done. So, cool. Everything is delivered on Blackboard, so you won't ever expect emails or anything like that from me with course content. I will send out emails about announcements, or if there's extra credit opportunities, they might be communicated through Blackboard or through email, but otherwise everything you should need for this course is going to be in Blackboard. As far as assignments go for the semester, essentially every week we have one assignment, and those are going to be worth 20 points each. Every assignment is going to have a couple different components. Largely, though, it's going to consist of doing the book, the lesson in the book, reading the book, and then completing a sort of supplementary side project that complements what you did in the book. So the first introduction into Illustrator, they work on a logo, and so for a bakery, and so I want you to do those steps and then work on a custom logo for Spot on Yogurt is the sort of assignment for this week. So it doesn't have to be super creative. It's just an opportunity for you to sort of use the tools that you learn to create a logo / word mark. Obviously, I'm not expecting like super primo things, but we're just starting. We're learning the software, and I want you guys to get comfortable with the tools is the primary objective. So there's roughly 16 of those for 160 total. If you're in the 465 section of this course, the upper division section, we are going to have an additional 4 projects throughout the semester, and you're going to determine what those projects are. At this point, I don't have those all mapped out, but essentially you will get to pick a project of your choosing, whether that's a part of your co-op or your internship or whatever it is, and you would sort of identify things that you did in Photoshop or Illustrator, and then you can submit those as your projects. Ideally, those would be like portfolio-worthy things that you could put in your portfolio as well, right? Otherwise, we'll have discussion on a weekly basis. This is sort of during class, just communicating with each other. We might do some formal discussions, but that might change. So just bear with me on that. Other than that, grading criteria is pretty standard, A through F. Continuing on to course policies, class attendance. There's some languages. I'm going to re-upload a new syllabus for you guys. So this one is for my online course specifically, so I must have uploaded the wrong one. Sorry about that. But so basically, my policy is we have this time to work on class. Like I said earlier, if you can finish your assignments quickly and you want to get out of here, you're more than welcome to. I just need to see that you guys are working on the tools and you understand it. I look at this time more like a lab time, not necessarily like a formal lecture. I'm not going to be lecturing for an hour and 45 minutes at you guys about the tools. I want you to actually be using the tools. So if class attendance becomes an issue and you're not coming to class, I might communicate with you that I'm concerned, and that might reflect on your grade, but there's no direct correlation to like if you miss one day, that's one letter grade or anything like that. So for late work, for this course, I am not accepting any late work unless there's some extreme sort of emergency or circumstances. And this is primarily because I feel like with the sort of structure that I have the course, which is that I'm sort of very flexible with our time here in class and outside of class, I want to make sure you guys are staying on time with your work on a consistent weekly basis. The work is by no means, it's not hard if you go through the book and you learn the tools. It's just time consuming. I really don't believe that Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator is like super hard software to learn. It's more about just committing the time. And so for that reason, I'm not really accepting late work. If you have to go to the hospital, if a family member dies or something like that, please just communicate that with me and we can sort of make special accommodations on a case-by-case basis. Academic dishonesty, of course, just like any other course that you take here at LC. I don't want you to be copying any other's work. If you're like sharing Photoshop files with each other and just submitting them as your own, that would be an issue. Generally, I've never had any problems with that in this course, though, because we are working in Photoshop and it's very creative, and these should be reflective of where you're at as a designer and where you want to be as a designer. And obviously, submitting someone else's work is going to be pretty obvious in that sense. If you need further assistance or accessibility concerns, whether that means written transcripts of tests or anything like that, please have a conversation about that with me in private, and we can talk about that. We might also get the Office of Disability Services involved, who can sort of coordinate what sort of accommodations you might need, whether it's additional testing time, additional time on assignments, whatever it is, and we can work through all of that. I'm not too concerned about that. I'm very flexible and open to whatever works best for you. As far as submission of work, just like with course methods of delivery, everything's going to be through Blackboard, so I don't want to see any sort of emails or anything like that sent with Photoshop files. I'm just going to respond to those and say please submit via Blackboard, because Blackboard archives everything for us, and then I don't have to worry about losing any of those files. All of your grades are submitted through Blackboard as well, so you should be able to go in and see your grades on a weekly basis and see where you're at in the course. So make sure everything's submitted through Blackboard. The one thing I will mention as well, if you are submitting a document or really anything like a Photoshop document, submit the PSD or the AI file, and also submit a PDF version of it, and I can give really good feedback through Blackboard on the PDF, as well as review your Illustrator or Photoshop files. If you don't necessarily want detailed feedback, you don't have to submit a PDF. I'm not going to dock points, but it is a great way, and I can give more constructive feedback on things with the PDF submissions. All right, extra credit is distributed on a case-by-case basis. So periodically throughout the semester, we'll have meetups, which is a meetup group that we have here on campus about web design and development. Those are great extra credit opportunities. Any other sort of community event that's going on, if you wanted to attend, and generally I just say we have to write up a page to 2 pages about what was going on, describe what you learned or what you took away from it. I reserve the right to offer it or not offer it at any point, so if you do need extra credit, just talk to me, and I can generally make that available if it's necessary for whatever reason, if you want to go from a high B to a low A or something like that. All right, how to contact me, I kind of mentioned this already. Email or Slack is my preferred method of communication, just because it's much more efficient than phone. I'm in my office, 2 to 3 times a week, but not necessarily every day. And so if you leave me a phone message, I will get it eventually, but it's generally the next day. Slack is great if you haven't used Slack before, because it is just instant messaging essentially, and so we can go back and forth very quickly and sort of resolve issues, instead of with email where you send me a response and then I wait 2 hours to respond and then you respond 3 hours after that, and it's just very sort of tedious and not very effective. So if you do have specific questions about Photoshop or Illustrator, Slack is a great option for that. If it's a more general question, a one-off question that I can answer, an email is totally appropriate as well. Any questions so far? Sort of speeding through all of this. Hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory. Open Computer Labs. Here in the labs we have a whole suite of new computers that you're welcome to use, and you have access to these pretty much all day. Jesse, Casey, and I all sort of agree that if a student wants to work on an open computer in another class, you're welcome to come in as long as you're not disturbing the rest of the class and there's an open computer. So generally, those are open all day. If you want to come in on a Friday, usually someone's in here, or you can schedule time with me and we can come in and work in the lab together. If there's a specific problem you're having with the software, the tool, or you can't figure out how to round a corner or blending modes aren't working or something, we can sort of work through all those problems together. I do ask that you just email me, usually like a day in advance, so I can sort of schedule things out and I can fit you in my schedule, or just stop by my open office hours, 10 a.m. to noon on Monday and Wednesdays. BTS, acceptable use of technology policy, be good to computers, pretty standard stuff. And then finally we have our schedule and outline, and so you can sort of see how I've mapped out all of the chapters for the semester. It's very book driven. Like I said, if you wanted to work ahead in the book, you're more than welcome to. I switched over from a previous book, and so this is my first time actually teaching out of this book specifically, and so I'm hoping that the feedback is much better. Our old book was very sort of outdated and very tedious, and this is more of a holistic approach, I would say. So we basically start with chapter 1 and we work through chapter 15, and then we'll switch over to Photoshop and we'll end through the end of the semester. Another big change is that we don't have a midterm exam for this course anymore. I used to do Photoshop first, midterm, Illustrator, midterm, or final. I don't do that anymore. I'm just going to do a sort of all-encompassing final at the end, which will include Photoshop and Illustrator. But as you'll see, I give you a week for review, which is dead week, and then we'll have finals that following Monday. And so that'll hopefully give you enough time to freshen up on Illustrator, because we'll be roughly like 8 weeks using Photoshops there, or 6 weeks. All right, any questions about the syllabus? Yes. The final will be like a multiple choice sort of test, true, false, fill in the blank on Blackboard. So it'll be more of a traditional test, but it'll be more on like terminologies. What does the pen tool do? It won't necessarily be on like creating a project or something. But if you are in the upper division course, which I believe you are, right? We'll just have those 4 projects throughout, and that would be more of a holistic, like what are you working on sort of project. Yeah, good question. Yeah.
So per week, I'm to expect to do the book assignment, read the chapter along with that assignment, and do kind of like a do it yourself, do the same thing by yourself assignment?
Yeah, so let me show you for week 1. If you open up the book, the first part of the book is a quick tour of Illustrator, and it basically runs you through a lot of the very sort of basic things in Illustrator, and they create a logo for this bakery. And so the idea is using these same tools in the book that you use. So the type tool, they use the shape tool, and they sort of use shape modes to blend shapes together. Create a logo for, in this case, I chose Spot On Yogurt, mainly because Spot On has been around in the Valley for a while. They've got sort of a fun color palette that you can work with. But I want to see what you guys can do with typography. You don't have to use the swirl at all. Just using the tools that you've learned to sort of create something new for Spot On Yogurt. If you don't want to do Spot On, I'm open to other companies that you can make logos for, but I thought I would just prescribe something, and then we could sort of all compare where we're at the end as well and see what sort of creative ideas we came up with as well. So yeah, does that answer your question? So the second week they like create a postcard using shapes. So you'll use like the shape tool and patterns to create like a postcard. And so for that week, it might be like create a Christmas postcard or something, right? So it's going to be very similar to what you're doing in the book, but hopefully complementary and give you the opportunity to be a little bit more creative as well and not just working through the book.
How many hours do you expect it to be second assignment?
So the really cool thing about this book is that the beginning of each lesson, there's actually a approximate time for each of the lessons. So the quick tour is going to be 45 minutes, and lesson 1 says 45 minutes as well. So that's an hour and a half, and then maybe another hour and a half spent on the building a custom logo, because that's going to take a little bit longer to think through creatively. But it shouldn't take, hopefully not too much longer than that. Yeah.
Do you have objection to using vector?
No, I think it's a great resource. Yeah, whatever resources you have available. Because what happens in the real world is, and if you guys don't know what Vecteezy is, it's sort of a, how would you describe it?
It's just vector images that people create. They're free to download. Some of them, depending on what, medium or something, you have to pay for. But it's really nice to have as far as beauty, like a shape or something quickly.
Right.
It's a lovely resource.
Yes. So the cool thing is, once you get out into industry, you have all these resources available to you. So I'm not going to say you have to create all your custom shapes. If there's a week where we're doing shapes and I say, okay, let's create a custom shape to practice that tool, then I think that would be, using Vecteezy would be inappropriate there. Right. But if we're doing something like, let's create a logo, I'm totally fine with you pulling elements from Vecteezy for frozen yogurt, for example. So they have all these sort of icons already created, and then you could incorporate that with some type. using the type tool, right? And then you could even modify these shapes and all sorts of sort of interesting and fun things. So that's what this course is about. It's all about discovery. I'm not going to necessarily, like I said, I don't really think lecturing at you guys is the most effective way to do this, and this is very different than what I've done in the past. I have done the lecturing thing, and I have done the just work through the book thing, and so I wanted to try a little bit different this semester, and so I hope you guys can sort of bear with me on that and hopefully enjoy it. And yeah, any other questions? Okay. The last thing I will show you guys. So I'm going to, like I said, we're going to spend the rest of the class time working on lesson 1. If you don't have your book, you're welcome to head out. I totally understand. But before you do that, I want to show you guys how to access the lesson files for the book. So if you open up the book on page III and go to peachpit.com/register, this is where you enter the information from your book, the ISBN number, and your information, and it sort of registers the book to you, and this is how you gain access to your lesson files. So go ahead and do this if you haven't already. It's going to set up an account and register the book to yourself. And then once you have all done that, I can show you what the lesson files look like, and it's pretty self-explanatory from there. Was everybody able to log into the computers and everything too? We good? Okay. Should be no password. You just have to hit enter.
Do you start making?
No, it should be user, I think. Then you just hit enter for the password. Oh, for that. Sorry. Yeah, you just create your account. Whatever you use. And everyone has access to Blackboard. Yes, good. Everything, like I said, is going to be posted on Blackboard. The only difference between this and the online class is that we're on campus here, so and we have time to work through stuff. I will post the recordings of our sessions. My plan is that if multiple people are having the same issue, I will demonstrate how to do that issue on the screen. So if people are working through the lesson and they keep asking about rounded corners, I can dive into rounded corners and show you how to do that. So those will be available on Blackboard as well. But yeah. Yep. Look inside. there, almost. That's. I'll shoot. Oh, it's yours. I don't know. They might be different. Maybe they have a couple. Check. So PeachPit is a great resource. They have this in my other class that I taught last semester. You can launch the book, and you have this very helpful sort of web edition of the book. And the web edition gives you a nice table of contents, and you can do essentially everything, obviously, in the book that you would need to, plus it adds supplementary videos. And so if you're working on this from home and you're having issues...
In this lesson...
the PeachPit videos are a great resource as well, so they will sort of demonstrate what they're doing in the book as well. So if you're struggling with reading as your sort of method of learning or whatever, try playing around with the videos in the web edition of the book, which is a great resource. And then, yeah.
Where did you pull that up? Web edition? Did you just...
So it should be under digital purchases.
Oh.
I think it's the state of mind. Yeah, so go to, account first.
Oh, it's in my...
So go up to account now and see if...
Oh, okay.
And so if you hit launch here, yep, that'll open up the web edition. And so this is a great resource. There's a ton of videos in here that are sort of supplementary as well. I'm not going to require that you watch the videos. But like I said, if the text isn't making sense, if something's not working, watch the video so you can sort of visualize what's going on there a bit better. The other thing is under this Lessons and Updates tab, all of your lessons files should be available. Do you guys see that? Or is that a faculty thing? So if you go to registered products, I think, there should be access bonus content. Yes? Okay, good. And that should be where you, as students, should be able to download the lesson files. It's a little bit less than a gig if you download all of it. But if you do it here on campus, it's pretty quick and easy. And then I just throw it on a flash drive or something. You guys find that the content? Awesome. Awesome. So that is where all your lesson files start from. So in the book, when it says open up lesson 001, you just go ahead and start there, and that's going to give you all of the sort of context for the files that you... Yeah.
Like, in the lesson files, you just download Flash or...
Yeah, so once you have them downloaded, it should look a little bit like this. So I have them in a folder called whatever the book's called, and then I have a lessons folder, and then you have all your lessons 1 through 15. If you open up lesson 1, I don't know why this is the Photoshop book in my Illustrator folder, but so I'll just show you lesson 1 for Photoshop. It gives you a start and end file, so you can sort of see, okay, this is where I start, and then you can see this is where they got by the end of the lesson. And so here at the end of the lesson, you can see, okay, we have our text layer, we have our ribbon layers, and we have our brightness and contrast adjustment layer, right? And then you can sort of compare, okay, this is where I started, this is where they ended, and you can sort of compare did I miss anything, or did I do something differently than they described in the book? And it sort of gives you a good sort of benchmark for where you should be, right? So any questions about that? Okay. Oh, the Illustrator files are way less. Good. The Photoshop files are roughly a gig, so that'll be later in the semester, but... The last thing I will say, and then we can sort of dive into our assignments for the week, or like I said, you guys can leave. It's really up to you. When you're submitting everything, zip everything into a zip folder. And if you don't know how to do that, you just right-click on whatever folder and you say send to compressed zip folder. On Mac, this is a little bit different, but it's pretty similar. I think you just have to right click and it says compress. So make sure that all of your lessons, all of your projects, we talked about like the spot on yogurt, make sure that's all in one folder for every week, and then submit that folder to me in Blackboard. Also, if you want feedback, include PDFs, and I can provide feedback on those PDFs. Actually, the PDFs have to be submitted separately. So if you want feedback on your design, submit it as a PDF with your zip. So then I can see the PDF in Blackboard, give you feedback there, and then download essentially your source files in the zip folder, if that makes sense. And we can work all through that all next week if you guys are having issues with that. Yeah, but today I just wanted to do a bit of an overview and then open up the rest of the time here in class to working on the lessons. So we can go ahead and get started on that. Let me know if you have questions throughout. And like I said, I'm happy to demonstrate things up here as well to share with the rest of the class. So, cool.